What's up, everybody? Thralls here once again. I'm Necrotic.
I'm Jammin.
And we have an album review for you, and one that I was saving for last just because I heard a lot of interesting things about this one, even though I kind of went into this one thinking that I was familiar with this band because we've gone over them before. We are going over the latest offering from Bedsore, Dreaming the Strife for Love. This also comes out on the 29th of November on 20 Buck Spin. This band formed in 2018 in Italy. This is their second album overall. Again, we went over their first album, Hypnagogic Hallucinations. We thought it was absolutely awesome. Yeah. Cold, dark, atmospheric, blackened death metal, atmospheric death metal, somewhere in there. I even went over their split with Mortal Incarnation, which I thought their songs in there were absolutely awesome. Maybe a little outdone by Mortal Incarnation stuff because, man, that stuff was amazing too. And that is what I had to base this band on. I, figured it was going to sound somewhat like that, a continuation of their sound, an evolution of it, and, what we got is something vastly different to the point where this sounds like a completely different band because, man, they shifted tracks hard into prog on this one.
Yeah, and that is putting it lightly. And, and again, my history with this band is, well, much like we said, we reviewed the first album, and, man, it was good, and I thought that's what I was getting into here, and it's not. I think both of us are going to attempt to describe what we heard, and it's going to be, well, interesting to do because this is straight out of the 70s, very atmospheric, but there's shag carpet and pills instead of the normal things you would find in a progressive death metal band because this isn't even death metal.
A lot of things have changed with this band. I went to the archives to check out their page, and the band photo has definitely changed. They kind of look more like the cast of that 70s show that, formed a prog band, which I'm sure has drawn the ire of a lot of metal has a dress code people, the same people that probably bitched about Two Mold's change in imagery. I don't care. I just had to make that joke because, legit, no, they're dressing like they're from the 70s now, or at least most of them are.
Yeah, to be honest, they kind of look like Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem, except not Muppets.
So yeah, we've alluded to a lot of changes in this band, and, sonically it happens right away. The opening track, Minerva's Obelisk, is, swells of synths. My God, the synths on here. They are just layered, and every possible setting. You have like spacey stuff, you have more haunting gothic stuff, you have stuff that made me want to go back and play Qbert. This opening track works as like more of an overture, like, older movies, if you went to the theaters, occasionally they would play the, main film score, like right before the movie. It feels like that. It's an opening foray into this really wild album. You have these like jazzy song structures. The production on here, much like everything else, is light years different than it was on the debut, where that one went for like a cold, very raw, atmospheric sound. This one definitely has atmosphere, but this sounds like like the bands they're kind of aping on here, which I'm going to go over a list of bands that I did not think I would be comparing this to. Namely, Yes, King Crimson, Uriah Heep, Deep Purple, and Kansas, too. And again, like the production kind of matches that.
And Frank Zappa, but without all the really weird shit. Like, there's some weird stuff going on in here, but it's not that weird. But the structure of the songs is kind of set up the same. Sometimes, though, with less jamming and more of just straight, like, atmospheric LA noirish jazz. And after that big production opening, kind of like the THX sound on the beginning of movies, after that, you get this really like clean, spacey, reverbed guitar. There's some droning synths, and again, that doesn't happen in every track, but it seems to happen when they're setting up their next movement. Because all the songs, even in this big intro thing, all have movements to them. And when the next movement comes in, you get droning synths and like organs and like a swingy kind of ride cymbal groove. It's not even full drums.
There's some haunting female vocals and this very sexy saxophone. I don't know, it might be the trombone. There's a saxophone, a trombone, a flute, and a trumpet on here to go with everything else that's on here, which is a lot. And right after that, you go into Scars of Light, which this song is absolutely nuts. Layers of synths, once again, the settings and the synths are explored all over the place. They're used to be like lead instruments. They're used to do counter melodies. They're used to just layer out guitar riffs or even layer out the cool fretless bass on here. And when you really get down to like the song structure on here, there are elements of familiarity with, the first one, or at least like kinda like you have like more blackened moments with blast beats, some tremolo riffs that show up. But generally, there isn't that death metal aggression. A lot of this is more about the atmosphere and, again, a totally different approach to songwriting, because I think, saying this album is written in movements, like every single song, is probably the right way to say it. Like, I can't necessarily call like all these transitions like normal transitions. They run like prog.
Yeah, it doesn't play like a song. It flows more like a stream of consciousness. Like, there are so many parts where even when they separate it into a movement, the next movement has almost nothing to do with the beginning of the song or even the middle of the song. Like, it just goes on its own path. It hurls itself into space with no suit, with no tether, no nothing. It just, there you go. You're gone. Like Realm of Elutrolide, I think I said that right. I don't know. I've never ever seen that word ever before. Starts off whimsical, fun, bouncy. The keys in the beginning, it sounds like a blackened jazz band went and played at a circus.
Yeah, there's like Carousel Calliope in there.
Yeah. And then out of nowhere, it gets upbeat and riffy, but there's organs, and they're kind of like a southern, kind of like a NOLA-style organ.
Honestly, what I thought of when I heard like the Hammond setting, which the Hammond setting definitely pops up a lot in here, like Baptist revival.
Kind of, yeah.
But it's in like progressive music with black metal stuff in it too. But even after that, it gets stranger because it sinks into this kind of sleuthy jazz section. Like you get that, nice right accent. The drums are smooth. It's almost got like a drunken swagger to it. But the melodies on top are very pleasant. So this is like a pleasant drunk rather than an angry drunk. And it builds a lot on this too. Like you get some like really pretty lush melodies that come in. Again, a totally different synth setting to kind of open it up and make it sound a little bit bright. And then you get, honestly, one of the darkest moments on the entire album. All of a sudden, it just shifts gears straight to hell. Tremolo riffs, which really don't pop up much on here. You have this like very ominous tribal pattern. The synths become much darker and much more dense. All of this in one song that, again, it's almost manic in terms of its mood shifts, but it's also very captivating in terms of its structure.
To me, I thought it kind of sounded like Opeth, but Opeth after Watershed, like in between Heritage and Incauda Venetum. Like, just that whole mix of Opeth where you really weren't sure what they were doing, like, almost to the point where it, like, alienated some fans. Just jazzy and proggy and kind of weird. And that's what I would equate most of this record to, but with actual jazz.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, like, jazzy moments on those Opeth albums, but, I don't know, like, it's like that, but it isn't in a way, too. Because, strangely, one of the things that this band retained from the first album are the vocals. The vocals are predominantly harsh. They're very ghastly. They're kind of in the back of the mix with a lot of reverb. They sound particularly haunting. But that's it. Like, everything else in here is vastly different. And where I think, Opeth definitely took a big old bite out of the big prog cake that was sitting in front of them. This band went after an entire buffet of prog to the point where, again, this is unrecognizable as Bedsore to me. Like, I wouldn't guess that this was Bedsore if you put this on in front of me. Whereas with Opeth, like even with Heritage and Pale Communion, I would still guess that it was Opeth because there are hallmarks to their sound that still are there. They're just being played differently. Like, prog elements have always been a part of Opeth sound, at least for most of their career. This is just wildly different.
In Opeth still, you had Michael, too, so you had vocals. There aren't a lot of vocal moments here. Like, there's really only vocals when they get to a blackened part where it's, like, notably black metal. Like, you're just heaved into a black metal realm for 30 seconds. That's about the only time you get vocals. All the rest of the time, it's Deep Space 45, like Fountain of Venus, which is probably, I don't know, one of the craziest, most spacey things on here. And it hurls you back and forth between being deep, deep in space and right out into the light. But again, there's not a lot of vocals to separate that. It's all a musical journey.
Yeah, most of this really doesn't have a tremendous amount of vocals. When they are there, they're very present, and they definitely give it like a heavier edge. Riff wise, man, all right, riff wise, this is like a buffet of so many different styles. Like you do still get like those metallic moments every now and then. Like a little bit more black end, maybe slightly deathy, especially on that whole section on Realm of Illuteride, whatever that word is. But there's also like more like heavy metal licks, or at least like proto metal stuff, like stuff that could be associated with like, Deep Purple and Uriah Heep, maybe even like Budgie too. Fanfare for a Heartfelt Love is probably one of the big standouts in here, not only because it is the shortest track, but it's also probably the one that is maybe moving the most in a straight line. Like I'm still saying this line is kind of, going all over the place. This album takes the scenic route to like everywhere. But this song actually kind of locks on like, a particular set of riffs, a particular, vibe for the most part, and kind of stays there. Like it definitely wanders off. Like the opening of the album sounds like a combination of Phantom of the Opera and Kansas's Point of No Return. Those two things have probably never met before until this point. Way to go, guys.
I can't argue that.
But as wild as that start is, it settles into this, like, kind of like D-beat rhythm. Like there's a good riff that drives it. The synths are predominantly very melodic and very catchy. The galloping drums on that kind of propel the song. The only thing I think it's really missing are cleaner vocals, because that's like the last layer of like a legit kind of rockin' hook on there. You do get some moments where there are cleaner vocals. There are, female vocals that are clean on the opening track. And occasionally you get some like harmonized vocals with the screams. But, there's really not like any flat out clean singing on here at all. But that isn't to say that this is devoid of melody. In fact, it's absolutely loaded with melody, much like it's loaded with everything else. The big centerpiece of this album, The Lion, the Witch, the Wardrobe. Nope, that's not what it is. A Colossus, an Elephant, a Winged Horse, The Dragon Rendezvous. That is the most prog title ever. The only thing you're missing is like Harry Potter in there, and then you'd have like a whole other like series of films that would probably follow. This is the longest song on the album at just shy of 12 minutes, and oh my God, is it an absolutely insane adventure into pretty much everything this band is trying to do on here. You have the jazzy breaks, you have like the flat out like 70s worship prog. There's a lot of like blackened moments, like full on blast beats at points. And the pacing in the song is just insane. Like they do a lot of long drawn out builds, especially when they're building into something creepy. The opening of this song sounds like someone flicking a doorstop and they just kind of like tuned it or something. Like, let's just pitch correct that, throw some reverb on it and some distortion. Boom.
Like miking a slinky and using pitch correction on it. It's really strange. I don't know if I've ever heard anything quite like that to start out a song. More akin to like Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum.
Yeah, except it's not like some made-up instrument like, I don't know, whatever, the power log synth thing or the lever action lever. That band is so confusing.
But at the same time, this, oddly enough, as crazy as it is and as many things are going on, is actually probably one of my more favorite songs on the record. It has moments of actual cohesion, and there's a lot of like jamming moments, like jam band moments, though, not again like metal. Like the band is rocking out, and there is a constant build over everything. It's calm, it's crazy, it's bipolar, but it's still oddly lovable. The ghost-noted drum work, the blast beats, it's like they're touching on just a moment of literally everything you can think of. Like every musical style you can possibly fathom is smushed all into this 12-minute song.
It's absolutely bonkers, and it almost kind of has like that like improvisational, like prog jazz sort of vibe where it's a stream of consciousness sort of thing. But at the same time, you break it down, it's very intricate. It's very technical. It's like Alan Parsons' Project, except with a black metal singer. Or Emerson, Lake and Palmer, except someone is being tortured in the next room over. because again, where the vocals sit in the mix, sometimes they're like way back, sometimes like, oh my God, you're right in front of me, aren't you? And the transitions themselves in that song in particular, and probably in Fountain of Venus too, they're again more drawn out. This is where like the synths really come out to play. Occasionally you get some like fluttering acoustic guitars, but the synths and those atmospheric transitions, you can almost kind of get like the sense of setting, and that kind of ties into, I feel like this album is very cinematic. I don't know what movie this would score. It would probably be absolutely nuts. Probably something like directed by Terry Gilliam. I don't know. That seems about right.
To me, it seems like it would be like The Wall and Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah, actually, that's how I would describe Fountain of Venus.
Yep.
There's sections on there where they're just like a few notes off from like that big droning heavy riff on Empty Spaces. The atmosphere on this album is so hard to describe. Like it really is, because it shifts around so much. Like you can go from like very classical play to jazz to flat out like metal tantrums to just old school prog rock. It's like being in a haunted Victorian mansion, but the mansion also has a planetarium and you're allowed to do psychedelic drugs in it. Maybe I'd visit that place. That sounds like fun.
It actually sounds like a pretty great time. Actually, I am convinced that I need to be on psychedelic drugs for this record, to be honest with you, because I feel like I should be able to see colors and taste the sound.
You would be a quivering, sweating mess on the floor after listening to this once.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know what the point of it all is, to be honest. I don't know. I would call this more almost avant-garde than I would really much of anything else, because to try and put an actual title on what's going on here is wildly difficult.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, while I think like maybe the back half of the album explores melody a little bit more, and it's a little bit more cohesive. Like the back half of Fountain of Venus,
yes,
I think is absolutely beautiful.
Yes.
Some of the most amazing melodies in the entire album. And honestly, the one that has all the different animals and other shit in it, I'm not saying that entire title, it's just way too long. The whole end of that, absolutely beautiful too. Yeah. So this is not bereft of melody, but you brought up a point where there's so much coming at you that, well, all right, it does a lot of cool things that I like about prog rock. It also does some of the things that I don't like about prog rock, where it gets entirely too self-indulgent. When I brought up Yes, the album that came to mind is maybe one of my least favorite of their earlier stuff, Tales from Topographic Oceans, where I feel like even the band kind of sensed like, yeah, we went a little too proggy on here. That's kind of the vibe I get at points in here where it is just too much. And again, the movements in terms of like transitions, you get a lot of pauses for atmosphere. And occasionally they are lulls. Like, it's cool when like you can hear the music build up behind that pause, but sometimes it just pauses and just changes tracks so quickly that it can be kind of hard to grasp. Granted, there's a lot of fun musical moments on here, and I mean, to this band's credit, this is the most ambitious thing they've released so far. I mean, they don't have like the biggest discography, but musicality wise versus the last one, this is an entirely different animal, and man, the amount of work that probably went into this is astounding. I will also say that this might come across as a bit divisive with fans. Like, if you were a big fan of that debut album, well, this sounds absolutely nothing like it. I'll also say that I think the vocals are starting to not fit with the music too. Like, there's not enough of those like harsher, more metal moments on here where the vocals would absolutely fit. They often kind of contrast the music in... well, arguably not the best way, at least in my opinion. Like, there's some moments where I think it does work, but for the most part, this kind of needs clean vocals now, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they work in the sections that they go into, but the problem with that is the section before the section with vocals is nothing like the section with vocals, and then the section after the section with vocals is nothing like the section of vocals. So you just kind of have this, like, mismatched bout of insanity, you know, blackened shrieks and screams and growls and whatever, just kind of sandwiched in between these wild songs, and you're like, does that really fit?
There was part of me that Honestly, I kind of wandered off and thought about the movie This is Spinal Tap, and the whole scene where they go out and do the improvisational jazz set in front of a crowd of people that were like, wait, what?
Yeah, dude, for real.
It's kind of like that, but again, I kind of appreciate this for the musical adventurousness. Like, this is an absolutely nuts listen, and when it works, it really works.
Agreed.
So overall, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. I kind of prefer their old sound, though I've only had 3 listens with this. Believe me, those are 3 really intense listens. But I like what this band is doing overall. It's a very challenging listen. I like when they stick to, like, you know, stuff that is a little bit more digestible before they go off into their, like, strange tantrums. And again, like, some of the pauses in here, I feel like get dragged out. But when this album isn't, like, stopping for gas in its journey or trying to hit up every dumb tourist trap like Clark Griswold in the Vacation movies, it's doing a pretty damn good job of creating something that is, again, like, vastly different, super ambitious, and has a lot of hallmarks of, like, really, really solid prog bands. But again, I totally was not expecting this. Like, you know, this is a very interesting turn for this band. I'm kind of curious where they go from here. But yeah, if you're a big fan of King Crimson, yes. Again, like Uriah Heep, stuff like that. Like, it's more in line with that than it is in terms of, like, flat out metal. Check this out. This is a nuts listen.
I'm with Nick, although I'm only going to give it a 3, which is still not bad. It's just so tough to describe this record, and what I heard and the things I latched onto are all in just, like, weird random moments in this record. Again, very musically talented. Like, I don't doubt that they actually sat down and really thought this out and, you know, sat with a whiteboard and, you know, a notebook and just kind of, like, scribbled some shit. Like, it's nuts. This is a nuts listen. It is 0% like the Bedsore that I knew and loved prior to this record. Absolutely 0. Maybe 1%. There are some moments in here that are still akin to at least black metal. I don't know really how really far down the metal rabbit hole I would go, except for the blast beats out of nowhere in the end of Fountain of Venus. That was just kind of weird. It's entertaining, but again, don't go into this thinking this is going to be the Bedsore you know and love. Go into this thinking, I live in 1972, and I have an afro and some crazy pants, and I think someone just gave me something, I'm not sure what, but ooh, those colors are pretty. Think that, because that's what you're going to get. Again, if you like any of the bands we've mentioned, plus a little bit of Frank Zappa, just not as crazy, and Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem, you're probably really going to dig this. I would recommend checking it out.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We also have memberships. They are only 99 cents, and our Lone Perk is doing members-only streams. We just did our first one, and we're going to try to tailor-make the next one, maybe over, like, one particular subject, because we want to do something different than, you know, our usual streams where we just fucking crack jokes at one another.
Right.
You know, all that shit. But, yeah, we'll be floating out some ideas in the comments section and in the community section. We also have stupid emojis. I don't know why I advertise that, but it's a thing that we have. All this is pretty much the new way to directly support the channel as we're trying to move away from Patreon and StreamYard getting more expensive. But if you would like to join, there is a join button down below. We also still have our store, thrallsmetal.com, t-shirts, hats, all that stuff is there, and it is linked down below in the description.
And as always, well, you know the drill. By the time we get to this video, we just appreciate you guys. We are filled with gratitude and many thanks to everyone that's a part of Thralls of Metal that keeps making this channel grow. We're seriously getting closer and closer to 20,000 subscribers. I think we're only a few hundred shy, which is just nuts. If you've been watching the channel for a while, you know that we're all metal all the time. Album reviews, discography rankings, multiple discussion forums, Nick's never-ending collection updates. All metal all the time. Again, that's what we do, but we couldn't do it without you. Thank you.
Yeah, and with reviews kind of running short, we are going to get down to year-end lists here soon, and then we're gonna open the content doors a little bit wider since I've been like stuck on collection updates forever. I'm going to record my last one of the year here really soon, and I'm kind of stoked because I want to move on to other shit, believe me. But yeah, thank you guys for every bit of support you guys give us, and we will catch you later.